Welcome back. Unit 2, Religious Experience. Objectives. Religions are pretty complex things, as complex as human beings themselves. Just as human beings are made up of mind and body, body and soul, intellect and emotions, the conscious and the unconscious, individual personality and a social nature, religions also exhibit a similar complexity. Faced with such complexity, it is very easy to identify religion with one or the other of these dimensions and miss out on the whole that religion is. This unit is meant to enable you to see in a holistic manner, not by studying all its parts, but by studying the spirit that animates religion as a whole, namely religious experience. By the end of this unit, you should be able to say why religious experience is important in the study of religions, identify some key authors and the titles of their book on religious experience, and have an adequate understanding of religious experience. Introduction. Let us begin with the last objective, an adequate understanding of religious experience. What kind of understanding can be considered adequate? Our understanding would be considered adequate if it identifies at least some characteristic features of religious experience in general. These features should be general enough because if we identify religious experience with nirvana of the Buddhists, for example, we would be neglecting experiences that are typical of other traditions. Secondly, our understanding must pick out the typical of religious experience alone. In other words, it should not be so broad and general as to apply to other non-religious experiences. So it should not be so broad and general as to apply to other non-religious experiences. If we identify religious experience with ecstasy and bliss, for example, such experiences might as well be induced by drugs and alcohol, but it may not have any features that religious people consider essential to religious experience. Given the complexity of religions, it is a difficult task to arrive at an adequate understanding of religious experience. Still, this is what we shall attempt to do. In coming to an adequate understanding of religious experience, we shall proceed first by reflecting on the nature experience in general, and come to the realization that such a procedure is problematic for considering the nature of religious experience. Thus, in turn, would lead us to look at some of the classical texts in the study of religious experience. Armed with the insights gained from that study, we shall proceed give a characterization of religious experience. Let us begin, however, with some considerations about the importance of religious experience. अगर यहाँ तक नहीं भी समझ में आओ तो कोई बात नहीं, यहाँ से शुरू होता है. 2.2. The importance of religious experience. When we think of religions, as the first thing that is likely to come to our mind are the temples, mosques, and churches that dot our land. But when we think about them a little more, we begin to realize that temples and mosques and churches are merely the tip of the iceberg that we call religions. It is merely one of the many observable external aspects. There are also others. These external dimensions of religions can generally be brought under 4 C's. Creed, code, cult, community. Creed क्या होता है? Creed is belief systems and doctrines. Code is the rules of conduct, some of which may even seem unethical to outsiders, right? But it is the rules of a religion. Cult is worship and adoration of the Lord. They worship. And community is all those people in one religion is called a community. So some religions emphasize this dimension more than the others. So there are 4 dimensions of a religion. ये आप याद रखें. Creed, code, cult and community. Creed क्या है? आपका belief system. Code क्या है? Rules of that religion. Cult क्या है? worship and adoration of your God and ways. And community kya hai? Some religion emphasize this dimension more than others, that they want to have a bigger community than others. These visible external aspects of religions can be studied under various disciplines such as anthropology, archaeology, history, sociology, psychology, and so on. But apart from these external aspects, religions also have an internal spiritual side that is invisible. We could consider this invisible side of religions as religious experience. Doing yoga and namaz, attending worship and so on, for example, are visible. But the inner peace and tranquility one achieves by doing such activities is something that happens in the invisible interior of persons. Religious experience, then, can be considered the spirit of religion in the sense that it provides the end or goal of the various religious practices and observations. In as much as this end is obtainable in this life, it is necessary to add the clause in as much as it is obtainable in this life, because most religions would not be satisfied only with the gaining such experiences in this life, but also look forward to a life of immortality and external bliss. Religious experience can also be considered as the spirit of religion in another sense. This is best explained by considering historical religions like Buddhism or Christianity. Take the case of Buddhism. The foundational principle of Buddhism can be found in that profound experience of its founder, Gautam Buddha, which is his enlightenment. Similarly, Christianity is based on the experience of what the Christians call their experience of the Christ event. Namely, how a group of people who were the disciples of Jesus experienced their guru in his life, teachings, death and after death. They called it the resurrection of their master. Both the Buddhists and the Christians religions then can be seen as attempts at institutionalizing, so sorry about that, institutionalizing and perpetuating these foundational experiences in the form of certain records that has come to be accepted as their sacred scriptures and certain religious practices, like certain modes of worship and meditation. All the above mentioned externals of creed, code, cult and community are institutional instruments meant to perpetuate these experiences so that they can be passed on from one generation to the next. Religious experiences, therefore, can be seen as the source of these religions. Can we say that this is true not only of historical religions like Buddhism, but also of other religions like Hinduism? It seems true of Hinduism too, in as much as it accepts normative scriptures like the Vedas and the Upanishads, which contain some of the primitive religious experiences of ancient Indians. Therefore, it seems reasonable to generalize our point and say that religions originate in certain religious experiences and seek to institutionalize those experiences. Why to institutionalize such experiences? The answer is simple enough. Those who have had these experiences consider them to be so valuable that they want all the others to have a share of what they have experienced. Religion itself then may be defined as institutionalizations of certain experiences with a view to inducing those experiences in its followers. Now you have to say institutionalizations 1,000 times before you get it, like me. I did not say it 1,000 times, but grilling. The last phrase is significant. For most people, being religious means to be a part of a community and share in its mode of worship, accept its belief system, and doing what the tradition demands. We could call it conventional religiosity. It is a matter of following the demands of a tradition, asking questions about the meaning of those practices, or seeking a personal religious experience is not a part of conventional religiosity. Conventional religiosity is a habit, a custom, a tradition that is received and is carried on. Such religious believers are dangerous. If they are ardent followers of a tradition, they become fanatics who want to maintain their tradition at any cost, even by killing others. On the other hand, if we are not ardent followers, they can be easily weaned away from their religion to atheistic and agnostic ways. However, unlike these run-of-the-mill believers, there are others for whom religion is a personal and a living reality. They may carry on a tradition if they find it meaningful, or abandon it when it is not found meaningful. For this group of people, religious experience is extremely significant. If they criticize received traditions, if they criticize them, it is on the basis of their experience. If they maintain traditional practices, it is because they see those practices as significant in terms of their experience. William James called such people religious geniuses. What he meant is that just as there are ordinary scientists and extraordinarily gifted ones like Newton or Einstein, or so too, there are geniuses in religion. Most religious founders and reformers belong to this category of religious geniuses. Whenever genuine religious spirit is threatened, they step in to bring about a new religiosity. The long and short of this discussion is that religious experiences constitute of the spirit of the complex entities we call religions. Religious experiences are the spirit of religions in the twofold sense of being the origin and goal, source and summit of religions, with the above mentioned qualification regarding goal. It is the religion of those who are genuinely religious and whom others try to follow. If religious experience is the soul of religions, it is important to know what religious experience is. Check your progress. What are the requirements of an adequate understanding of religious experience? Okay. What are the external elements of religion? Temples, mosques, prayers, namaz. And internal? The feeling of bliss. What is experience? That is 2.3. What is experience? A good starting point for considering what an experience is would be to reflect on the examples just given. When we speak of experiencing the breeze on the setting sun and so on, we are thinking of an object or an event, a happening. But it is also obvious that merely there being an object or event is not an experience. For anything to be an experience, besides the presence of an object or event, we must also be aware of it. Therefore, we can say that an experience is an object or an event which enters into our consciousness. But a little more reflection would show that this definition is still not correct. The First World War is an event that has entered into my consciousness in as much as I know about it. But it is not an event that I have experienced. I was not even born then. I know about it from the history books and not directly from my experience. Therefore, we need to qualify our statement further by adding a third element to our definition of experience, namely directness. Experience then is direct or immediate awareness of an object or an event. Thus, experience is an immediate or direct awareness of an object or an event. Unlike such sources of awareness as testimony, interference, and so on. The definition of experience we have just given can be considered the episodic view, because experience is understood as an episode, a particular happening in consciousness, as in that was a memorable experience. But there are others who argue that this view ignores the most important characteristic of experience, namely the expertise that comes from many, many years of hard work. For example, when we talk someone as an experienced teacher, an experienced architect, experienced politician, and so on, we are obviously not referring to a person who has undergone an episode. Teaching a class once does not make an experienced teacher. It is repeated acts of teaching that makes me an experienced teacher. Experience is, in this case, in this scene, experience in this sense, experience in this sense is an expertise, the result of hard work. While episodes are occasional happenings, expertise is a more permanent achievement. This view makes an important point and has special significance when it comes to religious experience, as we will have occasion to see. On the other hand, we have no reason to consider episodes and expertise as mutually exclusive. There would be expertise were it not for repeated episodes of experience. Moreover, in some cases, repeated episodes may not even be necessary to have a lasting impact on the person, as in the conversion experience of St. Paul that we learn in the New Testament. And in some other cases, repetition may be impossible, as in experiencing the death of a loved one. In such cases, an isolated moment of heightened awareness makes all the reference and brings about lasting impacts on those who have the experience. Therefore, we shall stick to our episodic definition of experience with its triple components of an object or event, and awareness of the object, and the direct manner in which this awareness enters into our consciousness. But we shall keep in mind that wherever possible, repeated episodes leading to expertise are to be treasured more than isolated individual happenings. If we apply our general understanding of experience to characterize religious experience, we will have to say that religious experience is an experience of religious object. This is not entirely false. People do speak of experiencing divine objects or persons, God, Virgin Mary, etc. While it is not entirely false to speak of religious objects, there is a preliminary difficulty with the definition. What would qualify to be a religious object? There seems to be numerous candidates that qualify to be such objects: God, Nirvana, Brahmin, Virgin Mary, Kali, and so on. Moreover, to speak of God or any other as objects of religious experience is red herring, because these so-called religious objects are not objects at all. In our ordinary understanding of objects, since these are not available to our senses as other objects of experience are, if we are not to define religious experience in terms of experienced objects, how else are we to define religious experience? One way of doing it is to say that a religious experience is an experience that occurs in a religious tradition or in context like that of religious worship or meditation. This is sure to include the Buddhist experience, but it leads to a more serious problem. Original religious experiences like the enlightenment of Buddha would be excluded by such a definition, in as much as it took place outside the traditional religious context and gave birth to a new religion, which is Buddhism. Now, how shall we go on about defining religious experience? Then, ordinarily, we define something either by appealing to a common experience or to those who are proficient users of that idea. We did not have any serious difficulty in circumscribing the meaning of experience because it was possible to appeal to common experiences. But that does not seem possible in the case of religious experience. Let us turn then to the other alternative and see how experts have tried to deal with religious experience. For this purpose, we shall turn to the classical studies on religious experience. 2.4. The study of religious experience, a brief history. If religious experiences constitute the source and summits of religions, one would expect that they would find a prominent a prominent place in the philosophy of religion. However, this has not always been the case. Philosophical attention to religious experience is a modern development. Prior to the modern period, what used to arouse the interest of the philosophers of religion were matters dealing with the existence of God, the nature of Brahman, relationships between God and the world, God and the soul, and so on. They used to routinely engage in arguments for the existence of God. For example, the modern interest in the study of religious experience came about paradoxically with the realization that such arguments for the existence of God do not prove much and they do not take us far. Counter arguments of thinkers like David Hume and Immanuel Kant were instrumental in exposing the shortcomings of such arguments. Many educated people even began to look down upon religious beliefs as unworthy of intelligent and educated people. Kantian philosophy made religion an agent of morality. It is under such adverse circumstances that the study of religious experience came to prominence. Let us briefly look at certain key thinkers who have contributed to the study of religious experience. So, the first one is Friedrich Schleiermacher. Friedrich Schleiermacher. Friedrich Schleiermacher. 1768 to 1834. Forgive my pronunciation. I'm not very good with that. We noticed that whenever genuine religious spirit is under threat, there arise certain religious geniuses who can rise to the need of the hour. Now, Schleiermacher, Friedrich, was such a genius. He had a deep personal sense of religion. On the other hand, he kept the company of those who despised religion as a mix of meaningless inherited dogmas and practices that threatened free thinking and individual creativity. It is to this group of romantic friends that he addressed his first great book on religion, Speeches to its Cultured Despisers. 1799 it was released. It was published. I'm so sorry. His personal sense of religion enabled him to see that religion is not morality, as Kantian philosophy tended to see, nor it is doctrines and dogmas detrimental to human flourishing, as his romantic friends thought. He tried to persuade his friends that genuine religion is rooted in a kind of experience that is sui generis. Now, sui generis is, I'll tell you what sui generis is. It must have something. Sui generis is a Neo-Latin expression literally meaning of its own kind or unique in its characteristics. The expression indicates an idea, an entity, or a reality that cannot be included in a wider concept. So coming back. Okay. He tried to persuade his friends that genuine religion is rooted in a kind of experience that is sui generis, one of its kind, unique. Doctrines and practices have only a derived status. They arise from reflecting upon these experiences. How does he understand religious experience? Religious experience for him is the integrative element of human life and culture. It is a feeling of absolute dependence on something that is infinite, but manifesting itself in all that is finite. So that was Frederick for you. Lived during 1768 to 1834. And then comes William James, 1842 to 1910. If the many roles, he says, William James says, if the many roles of a pioneering psychologist, medical doctor, no, it does not say, I'm so sorry. I'll just read, I'm so stupid. They are introducing William James to you. If the many roles of a pioneering psychologist, medical doctor, and a philosopher with a flair for literature could be combined into one person, that is William James. His classic work on religious experience is The Varieties of Religious Experience. As the title suggests, the book is full of anecdotes, I don't know what that is, from all over the world, narrating all kinds of religious experiences. It is a veritable encyclopedic collection of experiences enriched with his penetrating comments and insightful reflections. So very influential has this work been that it would be hard to find a book on philosophy, religious experience today that will not have at least a reference to it. But it is not a book that lends itself to summarizing. James has something to say about all the major issues in religion that are being discussed today. But I shall merely point out two of his ideas, selecting almost arbitrarily. The first concerns of the essential character of religion. If Schleiermacher was instrumental in bringing about the Copernican revolution in religious thinking by emphasizing human religious experience as the appropriate starting point instead of received doctrine, scriptures, and revelations of religious reflection, James took it to a further level by pointing out the essential nature of religious experience. He pointed out that religion is primarily about a sense of wrongness or uneasiness about the human situation, a wrongness that is corrected by making a proper connection with the higher powers. Another key point of his discussion is mystical experiences, which he considers to be the root and center of all religious experiences. Although most mystical experiences involve elaborate training in different religious traditions, he also notes that nature seems to have peculiar ability to induce mystical moods in us. Such experiences have come to be known as nature mysticism. But what is mysticism? James' study of mystical experiences led him to conclude that mystical experiences involve a cosmic consciousness that tends towards monism and pantheism. He also points out the effects of such experience in terms the optimism it generates. And Rudolf Otto. He lived during 1869 and 1937. So quite modern from their time. Otto was a widely traveled German who was exposed to different religions of the world. He, like Schleiermacher and James, was absolutely convinced that religious realm is sui generis, one of its kind, unique. In other words, religious experience cannot be understood adequately in terms of anything else, say in biological, chemical, or psychological terms. It needs to It needs to be understood in its own terms. What is even more disconcerting to the philosopher is that he holds religion to have a non-rational core which cannot be articulated in language. He does not deny the rational side of religion. His point is that if we focus only on the rational side, we miss out on what is properly speaking the religious character of religious experience. To this non-rational, non-explainable element of religion, he gave the name numinous. In order to show this non-rational character of such experiences, he avoids using ordinary words to describe them, preferring to use Latin words instead. If the religious realm cannot be explained in words, how can it be known? It can be known because everyone has an inborn sense of numinous. It cannot be explained, but it can be evoked indirectly. His classic book, The Idea of the Holy, is such an attempt to awaken in the reader the sense of the numinous through a rational discussion and analysis of similar experiences in the natural realm. Numinous is said to be mysterium tremendum, Wow. Mysterium tremendum, which means awesome mystery. Now check your progress. What are the three components of an experience? And number two is, first is what are the three components of an experience? What is the religious experience for Shalai Mashur? I think you remember the three components of experience. The object, the event that happens and enters into our consciousness, and awareness of that event means an experience. So number 2.6, what is religious experience? Bas, I think एक page और है. Okay, that's finished. 2.6, what is religious experience? It is clear that none of these authors talk about religious experience in terms of the object experienced. On the contrary, all of them do by turning to the subject of experience. How then can we identify religious experience? We are not completely helpless in that matter. There is a special class of experiences that are often referred to a nature mysticism that are relatively independent of such conditioning. Here is one of the most commonly quoted examples from William Blake. William Blake is a poet. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Okay, to see the world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. Hold the infinity on the palm of your hand and the eternity in an hour. What is noteworthy is that the poet sees, I think this must get boring, so let's change the view. Okay, from here. What is noteworthy is that the poet sees the same grain of sand and the wildflower as the rest of us. But what he sees on this occasion is not just that. He sees a world in a grain of sand, a heaven in a wildflower. He experiences infinity and eternity. In other words, such experiences take place in and through the nature, but are not an experience of nature that all of us have in our ordinary state of consciousness. There is something more than nature that is involved here. While this example of nature mysticism makes us aware of a class of experiences that is universal and draws our attention to the more that is experienced in nature, it lacks a crucial component of religious experiences that James brought to our attention, namely their existential character and awareness of the wrongness of our situation and its overcoming. The following example is better in this respect than the previous one. Okay, I like this one. One day, I was feeling deeply depressed by the severe criticisms a colleague had received. A person who was living his life in an honest and truthful sense. Nothing was real. Let's change too close, maybe. Okay. So nothing was real. After the children had gone to bed, I decided to go for a walk. The night was dark, filled with black clouds. Large white flakes of snow fell on and around me. Inside, a surging restlessness replaced my benumbed state. Suddenly, without understanding in any way, I experienced a transcendental beauty in white darkness. It was difficult to walk on the glazed iced surface. I felt a chill, but at the same time, I felt the ice being warmed as my fingers touched it. It was a moment of communion and experience. Of knowing and understanding, and a feeling of complete solace. I felt my inward heaviness lifting and discovered a new capacity for facing conflicts which existed around and in me. We need only reach out in natural covering to come face to face with creation. The person is in a state that is far from welcome. So this person is in a state that is far from welcome. He feels depressed, restless, benumbed. Life is seen as meaningless and futile. Nothing was real. But it is the transition from that stage which is astounding. From a sense of depression and desolation, he is transported into sense of communion and solace, knowing and understanding the realization that reality is just waiting for us to reach out beyond its natural covering so that we can find solace and understanding is remarkable. Let us now cast our net wider than the nature mysticism and find other kind of experiences that are not conditioned by particular religions and cultures, but still maintain this sense of affinity with wider universe. Ian Ramsey, who had an excellent understanding of religion, brought to our attention a class of experiences he called cosmic disclosures. He writes, "It may happen that when we are faced with some major problem as to vocation or immigration or the suffering of an aged relative, or marriage, there occurs a complex set of circumstances, too complex and too diversified to be result of any one man's design, which helps us to resolve the problem as well for those around us as for ourselves. A sense of kinship with nature strikes us. The universe is reliable after all." Having seen these examples, it is now time to analyze these experiences. All these experiences make us aware of a twofold nature of reality. There is the natural world that we are ordinarily aware, and something more than the natural world that comes to our awareness in these experiences alone. The second example alludes to it in talking about reaching beyond the natural covering. The third example alludes to it more vaguely in terms of kinship with nature. The more is an expression used by William James to refer to this reality that cannot be identified with natural. Otto referred to it as the holy other, that which is beyond the sphere of the usual, the intelligible and the familiar. This twofold character of reality usually finds expression in such terms as natural and supernatural, profane and sacred, vyavharika sat and paramarthika sat, etc. Secondly, there is some vague awareness about the nature of this sacred reality. Although it may not be entirely appropriate to talk of monism to refer to it, as James does. Monism is, I think, I'm not very sure. I think it is about one God theory. It is a one God theory. That everything comes from a creator and goes back to the creator is monism. As James does, what is clear is that there is an intuitive awareness of certain unity or correctedness of all reality that is ordinarily seen as many. Some call this one reality God, others call this one reality Brahman. Still others find none of these substantive terms appropriate and therefore call it sunyata. Since this is a non-rational, non-conceptual reality, as Otto insists, these different ways of talking about that reality is not only understandable, but even necessary get us beyond our words. Moreover, there emerges an awareness that this reality is the really real, such that we only begin to wake to reality when we realize that the material world, the world of space and time as it appears to our senses, is nothing but a sign and a symbol of mystery which infinitely transcends it. Thirdly, religious experiences have this essential character that is obvious in the second and the third examples. There is an awareness of the wrongness of the given situation and an overcoming of that wrongness by being connected to a larger reality that is hidden behind the natural covering. However, we should always be wary of talking about the connectedness of reality in terms of purely intellectual or abstract cosmic order, as may be done in physics and cosmology. Rather, this connectedness is always in relation to human existential situations. Devoid of that context, no talk of a cosmic order or interconnectedness of reality would have a religious character. Now, fourthly, although we relied on spontaneous experiences that occur without any prior preparation so as to keep our understanding of religious experience broad enough, we should also be aware that most religious experiences do involve some prior preparation in the form of practices like yoga and meditation, regular prayer and interior silence, act of worship and adoration. But what is remarkable is that even when prior preparation is involved, the experience itself is not seen as an automatic result of those practices. There is a sense of passivity in such experiences, a feeling of having been gratuitously granted a favor. I wouldn't say I pronounced that right. I don't know. Anyway. Gratuitously granted a favor. I pronounce that right now. Theist traditions call it grace, but this sense of passivity is also present in other traditions in some form or another. The Buddhist enlightenment, including the Zen, Satori, or awakening, for example, might come at the end of years of study and meditation, but when it comes, it is experienced as a sudden flash and not brought about by one's will. The very term enlightenment signifies this. Spiritual masters often warn their disciples that too intense an effort can be counterproductive. One is advised to let go, taking both these points together. One could say that religious experience is more like a change of gestalt than accumulation of knowledge or data. Taking these points together, we could briefly say that a religious experience is an experience of cosmic connectedness and personal integration achieved through that connectedness. Its opposite would be an experience of disintegration and alienation. Let us sum up. Check your progress. What is religious experience? Explain its characteristic features. Let us sum up. 2.7. So end. Thoda sa again. Religious experiences can be considered as the clue to our understanding of religions. As it puts us in touch with the soul of religions, it is difficult, however, to say that what religious experiences are. Ordinary experiences, perceptual experiences, for example, can be identified easily since we can refer to the objects precede, but we cannot identify religious experiences in this manner. In order to find a way out of this difficulty, we browsed through 3 of the classical studies in religious experiences, and with their help came to conclusion that religious experiences are primarily integrative experiences that overcome the existential wrongness of human situations. This involves being in touch with a reality that is present in nature but is not nature. But it is a reality that does not impose itself on us against our will. तो कीवर्ड्स भी पढ़ लेते हैं. तो कीवर्ड्स कौन कौन से थे? Sui generis, which means one of its kind, unique in its characteristics. ठीक है, it can be an idea, entity or reality that cannot be included in a wider concept. And then numinous tha. It is a Latin word. It describes the power or presence of a divinity. The numinous experience also has a personal quality to it, in that the person feels to be in communion with a holy other, the God. The numinous experience can lead in different cases to believe in deities, the supernatural, the sacred, the holy, and the transcendent. Mystery, everybody knows what mystery is, but a mystery is generally described as something that is difficult to explain or understand. But mystery could also mean that which is known and unknown at the same time, since the experiencer of a mystery is deeply involved in it without being able to objectify it. For example, life, evil, etc. That is all. So unit 2 ends here, and I'll upload the unit 3 soon. This has also taken a lot of time. Anyway, thank you for being there, and please avoid my mistakes, my pronunciation errors when I'm reading. I'm making mistakes. I'm not a professional, but I'm trying my best. I hope you guys will understand things. If you have any problems at all, if you want me to explain something in Hindi, अगर आप चाहते हो मैं आपको कोई चीज़ हिंदी में explain करूँ, तो I can do that for you. मैं आपके लिए वो कर सकता हूँ. तो please just write to me. आप मुझे message कर सकते हैं, आप मुझे comment section में लिख सकते हैं. I'll be very happy to help. Thank you so much.